Hey everybody, welcome to our first full interview for the Paramedic AF Show. We have been working on some technical stuff and have finally figured out how we're going to do this. So our first interview today is with Nick Duncan. He is running for Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office for the sheriff. And which you may wonder, why is he coming on a paramedic show? Well, Nick also used to be a paramedic. Both Michelle and I have overlapped our careers with him before, and we were very excited to talk to him, not just about, what he's doing right now, but some of the broader issues in leadership and mental health, especially in public service, a lot of the crossovers that happen between EMS and law enforcement, and kind of what are some steps we can take to bridge the relationship between the two, because there's often a lot of disunity between law enforcement and EMS. So very excited about this. Enjoy the ride. If you learn something, awesome. Share it with your friends. If you're offended, good. You probably should be. Enjoy the show. Welcome back, everybody. We have a very special guest with us here tonight. This is Mr. Nick Duncan, who is running for Spartanburg County Sheriff. And apparently, I think we overlapped a little bit at Spartanburg somehow. I have fishbowl memory, so if we ran calls together and I forget, I apologize.
Well, everybody looks different with beards, so you probably look a lot different than you did when you worked at Spartanburg.
I do.
He does.
I do.
He does.
My old employee picture just gives me chills. So anyway, obviously this is normally an EMS podcast, but a lot of what we talk about is very much leadership oriented in public service. And I don't think we're all that different from each other, that there's not a lot of common grounds to talk about stuff. So
right.
Let's start off with, tell us a little bit about who you are and what everybody needs to know about you.
Well, I am Nick Duncan, obviously. And then I grew up in Lawrence and graduated from Lawrence High School. Don't hold that against me.
I won't. It's fine.
And
I started my career down there.
So I went my young adult life. I went a long time not really knowing what I wanted to do. I straight out of high school, I went to University of Tennessee. I was there for about a year. Out-of-state tuition killed me. I went up there and partied and played and got my days and nights mixed up. And then my mom killed me. And then so she brought me back home. And then so I sought out the Marine Corps recruiter. And then I was like, I don't want to go active duty. I was a weenie, so I went reserves in the Marine Corps, Greenville unit. Okay. And then out of there, I went to the workforce. I worked in manufacturing for a long time. And then I grew up with my dad working traveler's rest public safety and Malden Fire Department.
Okay.
So he like pushed me and he was like, well, you really need to be a paramedic. I was like, I don't really know about that. Maybe a nurse. I think I can do a nurse. I can't be a paramedic. So I started going to school for nursing. And then so that, with Greenville Tech, you got extra points if you took like EMT basic and intermediate and all that. So, and I was getting bumped every time from people that would have bachelor's degrees and coming over, because you would get more points, obviously, for having a bachelor's degree. So I would get bumped every single time. And I'm like, dang, I've been here for like 4 years in this dang tech school, like getting extra points. And I was still like not even close to the cutoff. So anyway, so I decided to take EMT. And then I was going to stop at intermediate. And then my instructor, when I didn't sign up for paramedic, he was like, why didn't you sign up for paramedic? I said, well, because I want to be a nurse. And he was like, you really need to be paramedic. So I was like, He said, well, you can always cross over if you want to do that. So that was the plan. And then so I became paramedic and then worked Greenville County EMS for a little while. and then transitioned over to Spartanburg County EMS. And then, so that was about 2009-ish. And after that, I was going to transition to nursing. Then I got halfway through nursing school, and I was like, I don't want to be a nurse. But I still, my whole life, I've wanted to be a cop. But I was like, I can't afford to be a cop. And so leaving, so I ended up in 2014, I ended up at Spartanburg County, and took a great big old pay cut. We talked about it for a long time. I think I took a $10,000 pay cut just to go to Spartanburg County. And so I was at Spartanburg County from 2014 till 2023, end of 2023, almost right at 10 years, almost.
Okay. So you overlapped with Michelle a little bit too, because I worked Spartanburg EMS from August of 2015. I started there as an EMT in paramedic school, and I left there literally the last day of 2019. I was unemployed for one day, technically. But then she came. When was it? You came in 2020. I forget when.
It was August of 2020.
Okay, so a little bit later. So you overlapped with both of us a little bit.
Yeah. I stayed part time at Spartanburg probably until early 2016. That was another year and a half. I stayed part time, and and then I was like, well, I can't really. I don't have time to go to the in service and all that stuff. So I went reserve. The reserve in. What am I trying to say? The paramedic, where you put the NREMT into reserve status or something, whatever.
Gotcha.
I did that for the 2 years. And then I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? Am I going to make a career in law enforcement? Do I, want to fall back on this? So I ended up letting it go. And so I run into people all the time, some supervisors, when come back. I was like, I don't know if I can come back. And they're like, no, we can get you back. We can get your certification back. I was like,
yeah. So they say.
You're gonna have to challenge that new test.
Oof.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've probably forgotten everything that I would need to pass that test.
Okay, can I just say that I had forgotten that he was a paramedic and such. That's just, you're so cool. You've done a lot.
Well, and I mean, you sort of at least kind of figured your life out, because how many people do we mutually know who would do law enforcement and EMS and firefighting all at the same time? And I couldn't do it.
4 different EMS services and 5 different fire departments, and
I think we're talking about the same person, probably.
there's a whole group of them.
Yeah, true. So you start as a beat cop at Spartanburg County. What was your progression from there?
So I was on nights probably for about a year and a half. I worked with the same people that I did EMS, because I was on city trucks at EMS, and then my beat was Central. So I was Unisaxon, Arcadia, that area. Yeah. So when I was on nights, so I went from nights there to nights on patrol, and so ended up working with the same people. I was on the same shift as I was at EMS. So I was there for probably about another year. I think about a year on nights, and then went to days and spent a couple of years on days, and then went to investigations. Okay. So once I hit investigations, I was in the same spot the whole time in investigations. I didn't really apply for the sergeant positions or anything. I kind of liked what I was doing. I did take a corporal position once they brought those back, and then, but I still did my job. It was mostly just a title, honestly. But I still did my job, and I was still able to be an investigator. So the crimes that I did were property crimes. So I did car break-ins, car thefts, malicious damage to property, burglaries, petty larcenies, grand larcenies, pretty much everything. You have special victim stuff, and then you have white collar stuff, and you have violent crime stuff, and then you have everything else. I did everything else.
Goodness.
So what? And even when I was in investigations, I still did the same area. So I still did Unisaxon, Arcadia. So right there on Howard Street was my stuff. So heaviest caseload of all of it. And I had the opportunity to leave a few times, and they were like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you want to get somewhere? Don't have as many cases." I was like, "No, I know where I'm at now." Like, I mean, essentially, I've been here like 15 years, so yeah, I'll stick it out.
Yeah.
That was when I first started at Spartanburg, I was on 24s on Pat shift and had a great time. But I ended up switching to 12s, and Medic 16's area was my absolute favorite. Like the people, like everybody talked such shit about that area, but the people were generally fairly docile. You'd have, your exciting moments, but it was generally just an experience. Like it wasn't all bad. It was a wild ride, and you just held on for it. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was that
Yeah.
bad. So, what did you see over the progression of your time there at the sheriff's office? Did you notice a shift in the culture and leadership, or were things pretty well static for that time?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the sheriff's office versus a department like a police department is that it is an elected position. So I believe in term limits,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the longer you're in office, the worse you get. 10 years
Mm-hmm.
seems to be the turning point. After 10 years, you kind of set in your ways. You start. What I tell. Okay, the way I explain this is, so for the sheriff, if I become sheriff and I've worked with all these people on the road and in investigations and whatever. I've worked with a vast majority of them. So if I become sheriff and I'm messing up, a lot of these people would probably feel like they can come up and be like, "Hey, Nick, you're kind of messing up," or "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
we need this, we need that," and we'll actually tell you stuff and we'll be honest with you. But eventually, those people that I worked with, that I've built that bond with, are going to start retiring, and then you get the new people in, and the more new
Mm-hmm.
people you get, the more new people you get, the more new people you get. Eventually, I'm less of somebody where we have something mutually where they can come in, and I'm just a boss. And
Mm-hmm.
then people don't tell the boss stuff. You
Yeah.
don't go in and say, "Hey, boss, you're messing up." Like,
Mhm.
even though they can, they don't, because
Yeah.
they don't feel that like they can. So I guess that's maybe where the 10 years comes from. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But I came in with Chuck Wright. He was already in office at that 10-year mark.
Mm-hmm.
I took office, won an election in 2004. I came in 2014, and it was good. It was good when I went. I mean, it was still super great. You got all the stuff that you needed. All the uniforms were nice and clean, and new equipment and that sort of thing. But somewhere it started shifting in that next 3 years, 2014 to 2017. And, it got a little bit worse. And, me being started at 2014, I, I noticed a little bit of progression. But then people that have been there longer, they say that they had seen it longer. Obviously, they've been there longer.
Yeah.
Um, so in 2016, when Russell Lynch ran against him, I don't know if it was because he Chuck Wright beat Russell Lynch by such a large margin, he just felt like he was untouchable, or
Mm-hmm.
if there was some other kind of shift. But then after 2016, 2017, that's when I noticed that the camaraderie and the bond that everybody had, and this overall morale was
Mm-hmm.
on the decline. And it's not to say that he was being, a bad boss or anything like that. It was just,
Mhm.
I don't know, it was just a subtle shift, and you can tell when stuff happens, just like EMS or anywhere else.
Oh yeah.
It's just because you may have great bosses, but
Mhm.
you're just like, they don't care about us. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's where it kind of started going down. That was the shift, and then in 2022 is actually when I decided that, heard some rumors at the sheriff's office, and some things that are actually kind of coming out now finally, but I didn't like them,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not the kind of person to not say something. And I was like, well, if nothing's going to change within the office, for the employees, whether it be pay raises or, getting to have beards or whatever, then if I can't make it a change myself, because nobody's going to listen to me, I'm just a little corporal,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll run for sheriff and see if I can make the changes myself. And then, so obviously we ran and then lost. But
What would you say, like, I mean, because obviously I think people are either inclined to be um, the people that draw the line in the sand or they're not. You have your leaders, you have your followers.
right,
For you, what shaped your view of what leadership should be, to where you said, "Hey, this isn't jiving right. This doesn't feel right to me."
it's leadership is always in high school. I was in ROTC, and so I moved to Lawrence on my 13th birthday. Actually, I call that my
Mm-hmm.
growing up years. Where you become listening to outside influences and that sort of thing. So started in the 7th grade in Lawrence, grade court. And then when I got to high school, so that I didn't have to take gym, I decided to take ROTC. They were like, well, you can either take gym or ROTC, but you got to take one. And I was like, put me in ROTC. So, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. The first year, I was a nobody. And then by the end of the year, they made me a lieutenant, and then or an ensign, and then because it was Navy ROTC, and then the next year I moved up, was a lieutenant JG, and then the next year I think I still was a lieutenant JG, and then the last year I was the executive officer, so I was the second in command, and so which doesn't really mean a lot. I mean, it's NJROTC, but when you kind of think about it, it's at 17 years old, 16 years old, when the instructor leaves, especially when you're on, we would go to Boston, we would go to Pensacola, we'd go all these different places. It was it instilled leadership in me,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody doing trust and learn the leadership skills and what it takes to be a leader and that sort of thing. And then my job was the same way. I was 16 years old and I was closing manager over adults at Pizza Hut. So I've always had like a strong work ethic. I've always wanted to come in and make sure that I did a good job and that sort of thing. And then the Marine Corps just built on top of that. And EMS, even though you've got the 2 people on there, you have to be self-sufficient on a
Mm-hmm.
truck, and you got to be able to think quick and under pressure, and so it's just been a progressive learning experience, and just building on that leadership stuff.
What do you see? And obviously, I'm sure there's some things maybe you don't want to talk about in gross detail, but what do you see on a nitty-gritty level as the main issues at Spartanburg Sheriff's Office that you feel passionate about, and what kind of solutions you want to bring actually to those guys out there running calls and doing the work?
Well, I want to make sure that they're taken care of. The number one thing that I have is mental health. So, especially with men, especially with first responders, it's looked down on. If you need some kind of mental help, then it's kind of, you deal with whatever. And, a lot of times leadership, especially if it's older leadership, which is what Spartanburg County has, they have a lot of older, it's kind of like a, well, suck it up. That's how we've always done it,
Yep.
Yes.
Old good old boy system.
Right. So, even when Austin, when he was killed a couple years ago, a few years ago now, like none of those guys got any kind of mental help. They were, just expected to go back to work and take care of business, and that's not the way it should be. I mean, I know people say, with law enforcement, you can't have mental problems if you're going to be in law enforcement. So, but if you can head off those issues before it becomes big, then there's no reason why they can't, seek help before that. The problem is letting it get too far and letting it get out of control.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. That's the number one thing as far as the deputies go that I want to start working on. There is a Hope Remains Ranch in Welford. They do a lot of farm stuff. It's biblically based, and it's actually they deal a lot with PTSD, and I'd like to work with them and get some stuff done. I went and toured their stuff last election, and they have a lot of stuff. I'd like to have a. I spoke with a PTSD counselor, I guess, or psychologist, psychiatric.
Probably,
I
I
don't
guess, with
know.
a trauma
There's something.
therapist. Yeah.
She's one of them. But she's licensed and she
hmm
deals with PTSD mostly with first responders and military.
Hmm.
And she's offered her time and said I'd love to come in and help and offer my services. And it'd be great to have her on.
Yeah.
Anytime that we have a critical incident, to be able to call her out and, hey, if nobody uses her, nobody uses her, but at least she's available, and not just her, but anybody like that. Would like to have the chaplains count trained in counseling,
hmm
and so that leads me to training. Training is the number two issue. There's never been an abundance of money for training, and there should be plenty of money for training, especially when it comes to law enforcement.
Yeah.
But I had put in for trainings before. So fiscal year at Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office is July to June. And I had put in for a free training in July. We just got the money 20 days ago and was denied for the free training because they would have had to pay for a hotel. And it was just in Charleston. So, I mean, it's not like it would cost $40 in gas
Yeah.
and a hotel. And
Yeah.
they're like, nope, out of money. I'm like, well, so whether we get grants, whether we reallocate funds, whatever, it needs to be another priority with that.
hmm
Recently they've worked on the uniforms, so that's under improvement.
hmm
Equipment, we've always gotten new vehicles, so but continue that stuff. But those are the top two things to get in there and start working on for the deputies.
hmm With mental health, because that's again something we talk about quite frequently. Where do you see the role of where do you see the role of, say, having actual counselors and therapists coming in versus the fast teams, where it's more like a peer support group? Do you see those as valuable, or that we should lean more towards actually getting therapists and counselors in there?
I think they both have their place. Um, you know, even talking about people not getting help.
hmm
Um, Ken Hancock was the one that was shot on right there in the city a few years ago. Um, you know, him being able to reach out to other people. He's been in those shoes. He's been shot before.
hmm
If he could go out and help somebody else and offer them, you know, a, a shoulder essentially to, or an ear even just to
hmm
listen. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Tell me
Yeah.
about it. I've heard stories of asking people, in EMS and law enforcement both. You go to these calls. You go to a 5-year-old drowning call, and then guess what? 30 minutes from now, you got to go run somebody with a toothache that's
Yep.
been hurting for the last 4 months. Or on the law enforcement side, you got to go run somebody that's drank too much and just showing their ass somewhere.
hmm
And so you have to put those feelings in the back of your pocket and go about your day. So But I've heard stories of people that have been struggling with stuff that were in shootings or close to shootings or whatever, or had those critical incidents.
Hmm.
And, like somebody comes up and they're like, "So how you doing?" They're like, "I'm good." Like, no, how you doing?
Yeah.
Not good. I stay up at night all night. It's not good. I'm like, well, come talk to me anytime. So I think, some people will open up to therapists and counselors. Some people won't, but they would maybe, hopefully,
Mhm.
open up to at least some peers. So I think by having both, having a choice is very beneficial.
And what about, and I know this gets into money and HR stuff that's, technically difficult, but as far as giving people time off for, let's say you have a pretty significant situation where you have a pediatric shooting, go that far. You have a rookie who has never seen a dead body, much less, an infant.
Right.
Um, someone like that, if they're starting a 3-day weekend at work and that's their first call, that's going to be pretty rough for them to finish out that weekend,
Right.
most likely. Is there or could there be an avenue for helping those guys with giving them some time off, even if they don't have the PTO or if they don't have the sick time? Is there an avenue on a county level that something like that can be addressed?
I think so. So at Spartanburg County, you have when you're a new employee, you don't get. So Spartanburg County earns 8 hours, 8.5 hours a month for you get 8.5 hours for vacation and 8.5 hours for sick time.
Mm-hmm.
Sick time is unlimited to carry over. But for your first year, you only get half of that. So you only get 4 hours a month. So you're only getting 48 hours off. So you're getting 4 12-hour shifts
Yeah.
off. Um, so, um, but in a case like that, where you need a mental break, then I don't think it should go against their time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if they have sick time, go ahead, use it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what
Yeah.
it's for. Your mental health is justifiable to me
Yeah.
for using your sick time. Um, so I think very much so, because if they're no good and they don't have their mind right, then they're no good to the public.
Yeah.
They're either, you have people that are quiet when they get sad or mad, and you get people that act out, and you don't want either one, because I don't want somebody backing me up that's not thinking right,
Yeah.
and at the same time, when I'm trying to de-escalate something, I don't want, angry Bob over here to come make everything worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather, to keep everybody safe, I would rather, them and their partners, I would
Mm-hmm.
rather, you know, pay them for 2 days to be off.
Yeah.
Just to go get your mind right, talk to the counselor, talk to some of the other people that have had training or whatever.
Now, on what kind of pushback are you getting as far as? I mean, obviously, when you're in a political realm, you're going to have a lot of people going to say a lot of crap.
Right.
There's going to be trolls everywhere. I'm not so much worried about that. The people who are still on the road, is there any pushback that you're getting from them on this, or is this a breath of fresh air to them? What you're
I
what you're
think
advocating for?
I think right now it's not necessarily me that's giving the breath of fresh
Mm-hmm.
air. I think right now it is just a change of leadership is kind of, um, you know, first responders don't like change.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Paramedics don't like change. Firemen don't like
Mm-mm.
change. Like, people like stuff to stay the way it is. And I guess it's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And, because you're like, well, is it going to get worse or is it going to get better? Like, it's going
Mm-hmm.
to, one of the two, because it ain't going to stay the same, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and so with all the negative stuff the first responders see, I think that everybody's mind goes to the negative. But I think in this case, I think that they are. I don't really talk to a whole lot of them at the sheriff's office anymore, just because of the stuff that happened before, people getting terminated and whatever, for the fear of phone dumping and what have you. But I think that they're excited. Not again, not necessarily just for me, just for somebody. In this instance, I think they're excited for change.
And something that we in our own jobs right now are kind of working through is the question of accountability, how you hold people consistently to a better standard. Is there, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this, like, what do you see as something different that you want to actually actionably do, holding people accountable, not just to the bare minimum standard, but to, positively shift the culture to how we all should be behaving, how we should be treating people? What does that kind of accountability look like for you, if you get into this kind of a position?
So people are afraid of IA or Office of Professional Standards or whatever you want to call it. They think that OPS is there to get them in trouble, but it's really not. It's there to hold people accountable, and it is there so that everybody is treated equally. So there is a new Office of Professional Standards at the Sheriff's Office that was implemented last year before last. And I think that while that's great, it needs to be a mix of people. It needs to be a mix of, men, women, veterans, rookies, everything, a little bit of everything. And obviously you can't have 20 people on this board, but you can have maybe 5, that way everybody can offer a little bit. The problem that we've had in years past is that punishments for the standards were not upheld evenly across the board. They were, if you had Joe got into a wreck, he may get 2 days off with no pay and leave his car at the sheriff's office for a week. And then you had Jane, who got into a wreck, same ideal wreck, who either she wouldn't get anything or she'd get 5 days off with 10 days at the sheriff's office. So there wasn't a consistency. It was like you had said, the good old boy system.
Yeah.
So, if your social status may impact, what your punishment may be. So, but if you can start getting the standards, Office of Professional Standards, then you can start a spreadsheet and say, okay, well, Joe got this last time, Jane's going to get that this time, and be consistent. And it's the same thing with uniforms. You have some people that come in with dirty, smelly outer vests, and they haven't washed their outer carrier in 14 years. And then you have others that wash it every time that they're off, and then when they come in, it's nice and fresh and clean. So that should fall back to the supervisor. Supervisor should be able to come in and say, "Hey, go home and get cleaned up, and then come on back." I've already forgotten your original question, but I think that answers.
Well, just ultimately, how do you? And it's an open-ended question. Is how do you enforce accountability? Not in a totalitarian way, but just how do you raise the bar on attitudes, performance, everything, and hold people accountable? And I think you really hit the nail on the head. It has to be consistent. You have to clearly.
Yeah, it's got to be consistent, and you have to be able to justify everything that happens. And honestly, I feel like if you take care of your people, especially in a public service, if you take care of your people, whether it's deputies, paramedics, or whatever, you take care of your people are going to take care of the people. So, if you're taking care of the deputies and they've got everything they need and they've got good, clean uniforms and, they've got good working equipment and they've got everything that they need and they're happy and they're getting paid and they're getting, all the toys. I mean, first responders love toys. So they got the brightest brightest, newest flashlights or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to be happy. And then that's going to reflect to the communities. You know,
Yeah.
their happiness is going to reflect in the communities.
How would you describe your leadership style? Like, what drives you to act what you do as a leader, and how you're going to relate to the guys that would be on the road under you?
The cliche, just treating people the way I would want to be treated. And, you know, it's people say it and they run that into the ground and they don't do it. But I treat everybody the way I want to be treated. Just like on social media, I deal with a lot of people being negative on social media, and I try to respond back, and I'm like, and then I get there and I'm like, nah, let me leave. I'm gonna be nice, and
Let's
you know,
do what's good, not what feels good.
right. So you know, I try to, I end up changing it, and then because I would rather them be nice to me. I don't care if you agree with me or not. Like everybody has their own opinion, you know, but you don't have to be, you know, you don't have to be a dick about it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You know, I can reprimand somebody, and I can talk to somebody. I can talk to them like a person. And you know, some people you can't do that with. Some people you have to, you know, you have to get stern with. But 99% of the people, you can just talk to them. And you know, I don't really, my kids, I don't really yell at a lot. They listen more when I talk to them than, you know, when you're yelling at somebody, when you're being mean, they're not listening to you.
They go on the defensive.
Right. They get on the defensive. They stop listening, and they want to be disrespectful, or they want to, you know, disobey because they're like, "You pissed me off. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. Guess what?" But if I'm nice to them and I treat them, even the kids, the way I want to be treated, then when they do something they're not supposed to do, that makes them feel bad because they're like, "Oh, you know." And again,
Guilt
that
is a
doesn't play for
powerful
everybody,
thing.
you know. But that's my overall leadership style. Just treating people the way I would like to be treated, treating people like humans, and you know, I'm no better than anybody else just because I'm in a leadership position.
Yeah. 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 We've often made that analogy with leadership, that it's not all that different from being a parent. And
Right.
it's not like you can just be you can't just do one style of parenting for every kid, because my daughter needs a different version of me than my oldest son does, or than my younger son does. Like, and same for you. Like, they need slightly different versions of us because they're at a different place in their life. They're at a different developmental spot. So
yeah, you
can't just
have
have
to
one size
meet
fits
people
all.
where they're at. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as somebody who has worked both law enforcement and EMS, where do you see, not just generally, but specifically in Spartanburg County, where are the biggest gaps between those two disciplines right now?
I don't really know. I think so. We really need to be speaking to one another, right? Like when I was the last election, I was going to the Fire Chiefs Association meetings, just because I feel like you need to go to those meetings. You're essentially, you know, a chief of your department, and we work together. So there's no reason why we can't help each other. You know, supervisors from EMS go there, so why not? Why not from law enforcement? You know, we all work together. We all go to the same calls. And I tell people all the time, being a paramedic, and especially in the same area, it was the same people. Like every call between EMS and the sheriff's office, I would see the same people. It's just different calls. You know, I'm going out for, you know, to take them to the hospital, or I'm going out to take them to jail. It's one of the two. It's the same people.
Right.
You know?
I mean, yeah.
So, you know, if we can, you know, get with EMS and go to their leader meetings, or even in service, you know, whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same person going to every in service or whatever. But just for a communication and, hey, what do you need from us?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do you like to see from us? Do you not, are our guys blocking the road every single time y'all come on a call, or y'all having to pull the stretcher around, 20 cars?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Our next supervisor meeting will be like, hey, when you pull in, pull over to the side so EMS can come in.
Mm-hmm.
What it may be nothing, it may be a lot, but the needs change every month.
Mm-hmm.
So but if we can kind of communication,
Yeah.
that's how you bridge that gap. Whether it's EMS to law enforcement to fire.
I wonder how difficult it would be to get like one meeting a month for just all the services to come together and just be like, hey, bring your complaints to the table. Let's go.
I
Oh, by
don't
the
think it would be
way,
an issue. I don't think it would be that hard. I mean, you just have your leaders. I mean, what are the leaders doing all day anyway? I mean, they're just sitting at their desk, right? So,
Yeah.
have them once a month have them go to a meeting,
Yeah.
so my
and just
question
discuss
is,
it.
how do we lure everybody in? Is it donuts for cops? What do we?
Donuts,
Is it?
donuts
Pizza.
are a good start. Good start. But cops can't pick them up. Like I always, my wife, Brittany, she'd be like, "Hey, stop and get us donuts." And I'm like,
Can't do
we'll
Okay,
see.
so EMS
If
can
I can
get
get
the
by there in the middle of the
donuts.
night, maybe.
that. Well, I know something that, and this is not unique to Spartanburg. I've seen this all over the place, where there ends up being some dissonance, and this happens between fire and EMS too. This is not just a law enforcement EMS thing. There are times, and this cuts both ways, because EMS is just as guilty of showing their ass as well. But there's times where a crew will have a complaint and say, "Hey, I had this particular issue with this deputy." And, or I've had a consistent issue with this deputy. And whether it's EMS leadership not actually taking it seriously, or they do actually go take it up, and then there's zero follow-up. There's zero, like, yes, I understand we're different agencies, but we do have to work together. We do have to communicate. I always felt like there was a bit of a gap there. Like, whenever we would get complained on by law enforcement or fire or whatever, we would get our asses handed to us. But if we had a complaint going the other way, it was like, well, cool, not have a nice day.
You can't
Do
tell
you feel?
can't tell a cop what to do. Like,
Well, no.
like,
But I mean,
they can,
the same could go the other way. But
right.
but, and I don't mean that as a gotcha question. This is sincere. Like, did you feel, having been on both sides, did you see that dynamic, or is there a different perspective that we're missing, where that wasn't actually what's happening?
I do recall. I mean, we would go to in-service and stuff, and Rodney would make sure to say something. Hey, law enforcement or even fire has an issue with blah, 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 blah. Like, fix it or go to McDonald's. So, but I don't know. I don't know if leadership at the sheriff's office was just cutting it off or and just not taking it seriously or what. But that's something that would again benefit from having a joint monthly meeting.
Yeah, I feel like, because, and again, there's always two sides to every story, and neither side is innocent, because I will sit and harp all day on the shortcomings of other medics and EMTs and stuff that I've done even over the years. Like, I haven't always had a great attitude about work. Like,
right.
I've showed up and had shit days before. But I guess that, that's one thing I feel like, and you hit the nail on the head. Let's communicate about it. Let's actually get some interface. Not just, yes, you need to follow chain of command, but there needs to be some level of interface outside of just running calls.
Right.
Is there something about, because everybody feels like they're not understood. So EMS in general, we have an inferiority complex because we're the redheaded stepchild of everything, healthcare, public service, all of it. So we feel like nobody understands us. Is there, from the law enforcement side, and not just the typical like press related stuff, but between law enforcement and EMS, what are we missing? What are we missing about law enforcement? Is there where is our perspective going awry? Because I feel like the tensions between EMS and law enforcement just don't really get much better. There's either no relationship or it's a like sort of terse relationship.
I think that's just intra. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Down here, law enforcement and fire get along.
Mm-hmm.
But you go up north, NYPD and NYFD is like this. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's cats and dogs, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just the departments. I think it's just different mindsets. EMS is supposed to be, I care for you, I love you, I love you. What can I do for you? And law enforcement is supposed to be get in, sit down, shut up, and let's go. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think it's just a different mindset as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
obviously
feel
you have people that like both,
Yeah.
but people that are in healthcare typically do it because they like helping people.
Mm-hmm.
Cops are typically in law enforcement because they like to, go out
protect.
and tackle and wrestle and fight the bad guy.
Yeah.
So, and then with that you have two different aspects. We've been on calls before and had EMS complaint. Y'all were really mean to that guy. I'm like, okay, well, you weren't here 10 minutes before. Like you
Yeah.
didn't, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. I've had
Mm-hmm.
been on calls and EMS leaving. They were way too nice to that guy. Like
Yeah.
so
Can you
I
just
think it's
arrest
just
him?
different mindsets.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really know how you bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
You have some people that are good middle of the road. I feel like I'm a good middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was EMS, obviously I would show up on calls sometimes and be like, and then you get there and he's filled up, I'm vomiting blood and like, what's going on? Let me see it. And you fill up a whole emesis bag of
Yeah.
bright red blood. And you're like, shit. So
So it's always when you were thinking it wasn't going to be serious that it bites
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. Brittany and I had one like we used to work Rescue 21, and we had one like
Mm-hmm.
that, and we were just kind of like, oh, like let me see it. And he had like two emesis bags full, and I was like,
Mm.
scoop. So
Time to leave.
yeah.
What would you say was the most memorable part of your career, either EMS or law enforcement? Like, what was the period where you were like, oh my God, I love this. This is amazing. Either a specific instance or just a general phase of your career.
It would have been. I didn't really have that with EMS. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I did. 99% of the calls at EMS are all BS stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, the calls. There was one call with EMS that a buddy of mine talk about. I would assume y'all know Matt Ridings. So
I know the name.
he was with Calpins Fire Department for a while, but he and I were partners. We're buddies, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but we had a call. It was the middle of the night, and I was medic. He was EMT, and we had our groove because we would always swap trucks to work together. And when we'd work 22, we'd go sit out on the general store and rock in the front porch and whatever. Go race boats when we go stand by for May 15, whatever.
Oh, the good old days.
When we go stand by, we'd make little paper boats and don't tell the environmental people, but we'd make little boats and we would throw them down and then see who's would cross the line fastest. But anyway, so we had a call at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We were thinking, oh, this is going to be BS. And his job was bring in the oxygen, and mine was bring in the bag. And we get there, and he was tripoding and couldn't breathe for anything. And then so I was talking to him, and I was like, why is Matt not putting oxygen on this dude? And Matt's thinking, why is he not putting oxygen on this dude? And so I looked at him and I was like, you want to get some O2 on him? And he's like, Let me go get the bag. I'll be right back. So we completely like botched the whole call. I mean, we ended up putting him on CPAP, and but by the time we got to Mary Black, he was telling Doc, he was like, "Those guys saved my life." He said, "Those guys are right there. If it wasn't for those guys, I'd be dead." And then
Aw.
we're thinking we done screwed up, and he's just grateful that he's still alive. And so those calls make EMS worth it, you know. And then when I was in investigations, I would get people that would call me up and be like, "Hey, I know you didn't find it, but I really appreciate you going out there and making the effort." And just the feedback from those people, makes that worthwhile. So I guess, I mean, honestly, just realized, but I mean, the recognition that you get when you do a good job from the citizens, knowing that what you're doing, they do appreciate it. And I know that a majority of the people appreciate what you do. They might not tell you, but it is nice to get recognition. Whether I don't care if I get a pat on the back, but it is nice to hear that guy in there that's, "Hey, those guys saved my life," or
Yeah.
I don't care if you tell my supervisor, but it's nice to know that what I did was appreciated.
So you hit on mental health, and I'm just spitballing here. What is your experience, your mental health experience in this job? Like, I feel like we're all a little bit different. Some of us just compartmentalize and carry on, and sometimes, we need a little more. What's your experience been like, both across multiple disciplines with mental health?
I don't know. Mine has always been, I don't really talk about stuff. I just put it in my back pocket, try to forget about it. I do really good, me personally, I do really good at compartmentalizing and, putting stuff away and not thinking about it. But I mean, I still think about stuff, every once in a while. So, but a lot of people, they're not like that. They can't turn that off. I was talking with one of the deputies last election. He was there. He was one of the first ones when Austin was shot. And so he still dealt with a lot. I mean, this was 2 years after Austin was shot.
Yeah.
And, he called after one of my mental health videos and was like, "Hey, I really appreciate you, stepping up and saying that kind of stuff." So he was Bravo 22. So when they retired his number, his call sign, for a little while, and so they didn't use it for, I don't remember how long. I think maybe 6 months. So when the first Bravo 22 came on the radio, like, he was like, it just came right back. Like, I had to pull over. I started puking on the side of the road. Like, so I mean, some people, a small trigger like that. Me personally, I'm not like that. I've always done good at just turning the switch. But honestly, if you think about it, I mean, everybody's good until you're not.
Yeah.
And then, eventually, maybe one day, it'll all catch up to me. I mean, I've been in fights. I have not been in a shooting, but I've been in fights, and I've been, close to shootings. I've been around shootings. Victims, kids, infants, old people, I've seen all kinds of stuff. Who's to say that one day I just don't wake up and, now I need something. So everybody's good until they're not. So, but if there's somewhere that you can go, that you would feel comfortable going, just knowing that there's somewhere that you can go when you're not okay, I think is a very beneficial thing.
Gotcha. So if obviously we hope all goes well with election this go around. I'm not gonna lie, I my experience with Chuck Wright had been minimal, but it had always been good. Just generally hearing people talk about him, never heard anything bad, nothing. And I remember when I saw your name first pop up, I was like, this is interesting. Like I hadn't heard this stuff before. And I generally don't get wrapped up in politics, period, much less local politics. So, I didn't really have a strong opinion either way, but obviously now watching the news, I was like, I think that guy was onto something. There was a little bit more to it. So if all goes well and you get voted in, what does your first week look like? What's your game plan, going into something like this?
So you have to, coming out of an office like that, anytime, again, Chuck Wright did a phenomenal job in Spartanburg County for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like we said, with long-term politics, you eventually there's a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what causes it, but it happens in every political position. And that's why I like term limits for everything.
Yeah, agreed.
Not just presidents, not just but everything. Everything needs a term limit. And so the first week is going to be busy. It's going to be audits. We're going to have to audit everything. We're going to have to audit the armory and funds and start working to see, because the plans that I have are going to take money.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to figure out where we are with money, and so that we can start working on these things. And that's going to take time. It's going to take, honestly, it's going to take probably 2 or 3 years to get everything straightened out. It's going to take that long to get. And I'm not saying he's messed it up that bad. Just to get everything where I feel like it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Not just money, but because stuff's not free.
Yeah.
And you just can't come in and say, okay, well, everybody's getting new vests, or everybody's getting new cool vests, or everybody's getting whatever. Because you have to trickle it in.
Yeah.
So I think the first 2 or 3 years are going to be pretty busy, but first week is the audit.
What are you most nervous about jumping into something like that?
Just probably just making the connections and making sure that I make the right connections and make sure that I can articulate, because coming into it, especially right now with the credit cards and whatever, everything's getting declined at the county. Every time they submit something, county council is like, nope, 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 like nothing. And so you're going to have to really justify everything that you do for a while. It takes 10 seconds to tear down the trust, and it takes 10 years to build it up. So just making those connections and being able to articulate the needs and to make sure that the right people are in the right positions so that we can get everything done that we need to.
Yeah. Anything else you want to weigh in on? Any questions or anything? I know I've been running my mouth most of the time. Sorry.
That's okay. I've been enjoying the conversation. I like that I'm not the one having to run my mouth.
Don't let her fool you. She likes to talk too.
So rude.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to put out there for anybody? Something that people don't know about you? Something that is important to you about all of this?
I think just for people to, I think everybody needs to step back, especially with this election. We have 8 people running right now, or
Holy
say
cow.
that they're going to run. They still have to file. But we don't need a politician in the office.
No.
if you start as a politician, then where are you going to be in the next 4 years, 8 years, however long you're in? If you start with the good old boy system, where are you going to be in the next 4 years, 8 years? Like, how bad is it going to be?
Oh, preach it.
So, look at all the candidates, look at everybody, and then listen to their goals, and not necessarily. I guess you do have to weed out. I mean, with anybody that runs for public office, you do have to be cautious with, are they just, blowing smoke, or are they actually going to try to do something? So you really need to kind of read the candidates' hearts. Why are they in it? Are they in it because, they're trying to make a difference? Are they in it because they want to make, a big paycheck? Are they in it because they want to help the deputies? Are they in it because they want to get all the good toys themselves? What is it? Why, why are they in there?
Okay, I guess I sort of kind of have a question based off that.
Okay.
So something that Daniel and I frequently talk about is years of service does not always equal better provider.
Right.
How do you see that applying to law enforcement?
It is the same. I feel like it's the same in law enforcement.
Okay.
If you have somebody that is typically when you have somebody that's retired, they are retired because they're done. They want to stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like the people that are at the end of their careers, you can only be a paramedic for so long, and then you become that salty paramedic. And
Often.
if that salty paramedic becomes a supervisor, then they're going to be a salty supervisor.
Yeah,
But
the
if you
change
get
doesn't make it
somebody,
better.
yeah, and if you get somebody that's in the middle of their career, like I'm right dab in the middle of law enforcement, I'm at the 10-year mark, and so I'm still young enough in my career that I still want to be in law enforcement. And I can see where all the new guys are coming in. I can see the stuff that they want, and honestly, I mean, it's a whole new generation of people coming in.
Very much
And
so.
and the difference in the generations that are already in law enforcement and the ones that are coming in is it's big. It's a big difference. And so when you have the older people that have been in law enforcement 20, 30, 40 years, they're not going to see eye to eye with the new generation. So I feel like people want in law enforcement, they're like, I want somebody with 30 years experience. Okay, well, you're going to get the salty cop that doesn't care anymore when you get that. Just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that any of the guys are salty or whatever.
No, I get it.
Just statistically, that happens.
Right, in general. So, but you do want experience. And so I feel like if 10 years is good enough to become a doctor, or 10 years is good enough to be a lawyer, then
That's
surely
fair.
it's good enough to build a team at the sheriff's office. Because the position of the sheriff does not run the sheriff's office. There's going to be all kinds of people come at me about that. But the sheriff doesn't run the sheriff's office. The people he appoints, the people that he entrusts, over the divisions, and the deputies that are out there on the streets are the ones running the sheriff's office. The sheriff's not out there running calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. So he's not the one running the sheriff's office. A crabbing boat. The captain is the captain, but he's not running the boat. The first mate's running the boat. So that's how I feel about experience. And somewhere along the way, we've equated experience with being a good leader, and that's just not the case. And it's the same thing. People probably get on to me about this too, but it's kind of like in the civilian world, a 4-year college degree equates to being a good leader. So therefore, you can't be a manager unless you've got a 4-year degree. Okay, well, there's a lot of damn good leaders out there that don't have degrees. So it's the same thing. If you're only limiting your people to 30-year veterans or 40-year veterans, then you are limiting a vast majority of people that can be really good leaders.
I think he makes a good point. To do
Mhm.
good at any job, you have to have the passion.
Yeah.
I mean, if you no longer care, you're not going to put your best foot forward.
You have to have some level of commitment. And I think that's where people like you and like us, who are all more or less at similar spots in our careers,
Mm-hmm.
we have learned a lot from the 30 and 40-year-old salty people,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
but we knew something wasn't right. We knew there was just
Mhm.
something off about the way they treated us, the way they approached life. We knew that wasn't going to work. But we also are bridging the gap to the younger generation who just think completely differently than we do,
Right.
which is mind-boggling sometimes. But I think that gap is the sweet spot to be. I think you're hitting that perfectly, because you're in it enough that you know what you're doing, you care about it, and you're going to bring your sense of personal excellence to everybody else. And that's the way it should be. You don't want somebody who's not focused on excellence being in charge of everybody else and expecting excellence out of them when he's not doing it to himself.
Right.
So, yeah. Anything else you want to throw in there?
I really like him. I think he should get the job.
I think you got our vote.
How about that for an endorsement?
Well, let me ask you one last question, and I didn't plan on this, but it just kind of just popped in my head, and maybe if we're going to start doing more interviews, we need to have little traditions. But what would you? How old are you now? How old are you?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm 40.
So-
I'm 46.
Okay.
Oh my God, he doesn't look 46 either.
No, I was not guesstimating that. So maybe we're not quite the same age, but it's okay.
It's okay. We know you're
Okay,
we know you're
thanks.
getting
I
old.
know.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah, you're welcome.
Never mind. I didn't realize you were that old. Never mind.
No. I'm younger.
Delete
But
this one. We'll delete this one.
what would you, looking back at your career and all of life that you've lived, what would you tell, high school graduate you now? What's the biggest lessons you would pass down to that version of you right now?
I think that by staying in school, I would probably have had a better career path. But I think that the way my life planned out, I think it shaped who I am.
Mhm.
Just if I could go back, just keep on keeping on, and trust God, and listen to His plan, and do whatever He's got in store for you. Because it took me a long time to realize that God's got a plan for everything, and just because it's my plan doesn't mean it's His plan.
I was say, what is that expression that we make plans and God laughs?
I mean,
if you want to make God laugh, tell Him your plans.
Or I knew it was something like that.
Or was it no plan
that's
survives
very
contact with
true.
the enemy?
Yep.
Well,
just tell my old self to keep on keeping on and do the best I can.
Well, Nick, it's been a pleasure. We very much enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
And best of luck to you. We're rooting for
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate it.
All right. You have yourself a good night, brother.
All right. Thank you. Y'all too. Thank you for having
Take
me
care. No
Bye.
problem. Bye.
on. Bye.